James Corden, better known for his crimes against humanity like Carpool Karaoke, Cats the Musical, and that one Let's Get Loud flash mob where he stopped traffic in the middle of LA to thrust in front of people's cars. A lot of people ask me, why don't you like this funky little British man? And the answer is simple. A, he's British. B, he's not funny. C, he's in the movie we're gonna talk about today. And D, he annoys me a lot. Now, what movie am I talking about, you may ask? There's a lot of them, and all that I have seen have equally made me cry because I wasted around 2 hours of my life watching James Corden be unfunny and stupid on my TV screen. But today we're talking about one of his less known films. Like, it's still, if you Google James Corden, you will see it under his list of what he was in. But today we're talking about lesbian vampire killers. Vampire? I hardly know her. Now, from the title, you may assume this movie is about lesbians killing vampires, you know? And that's a common mistake. Whenever I bring up this movie to someone, they're like, oh, it's about lesbian vampire hunters. Pretty cool. No, it's about two misogynistic, homophobic British men killing vampires who just happen to be all lesbians. Most people I speak to have no idea this movie exists, you know. And I remember when I had that innocence and peace of mind, and this never plagued me, you know. But this isn't the first movie I've seen about lesbians and vampires. You know, the lesbian vampire trend. However, the other movie I watched was Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter, where Jesus, he hunts the vampires to save the lesbians. Which is slightly different. It's enjoyable, not homophobic, and also James Corden isn't in it, and that's like 3 pluses, you know? Weirdly enough, you know, I just looked on the Wikipedia for this, so don't take this as fact, but James Corden has mentioned this movie publicly about twice. Once on the Late Late Show and once on another talk show, where he stated it was dog shit, which it is. That is true. But he tells people not to watch it, but he fails to tell them how horrible it really is. Before I get started on what happens in the movie, I want to say that there is no real reason for all the vampires to be lesbians other than the popular, well, not as popular nowadays, fiction trope of lesbian vampires, which unfortunately, you know, holds the undertone that portrays lesbians as predators or lesbianism as a corruptive influence. But we can talk about that in like just a moment because it's relevant in the first scene actually. But just imagine for a moment, I made a movie called Straight Zombie Exterminators. It's day 96 of the apocalypse. The lingering stench of Axe body spray continues to lace the air. I found shelter in the apartment of a gay couple. I just hope there are no straight zombies here. Yeah, that would go over real well.
Centuries ago, during the dawn of the Red Moon, our peaceful hamlet was terrorized by a beast. Born not of man, but spewed forth from the fieriest pits of Hades, with an evil fueled by a hatred of men and a love of
I mean, you can sum up this first scene in 2 words. Lesbianism bad. And they have the whole part where, like, Carmilla seduced Hetty's wife and, you know, into the way of the gay, and now he has no wenches. Either way, that is not how being LGBT works in general. There's such thing as, you know, having a gay awakening, and that could be an actor or an actress, but those are two completely different things. Anyways, Carmilla is struck down by the Hetty, the guy with no wenches, and lays a curse on the town that turns every woman into a lesbian vampire when they're 18. Now, you know, they're on to something. I remember when the bisexual aliens, you know, descended from space on my 18th birthday, and they dubbed me one of them, and then they just fucking dipped. The question I have is, if all the women are lesbians at 18, how are they having children? Because they state that this, you know, the curse is first lain after the Crusades. So that's like 1400s maybe. The movie, which takes place in 2009, there's clearly still plenty of inhabitants in the village. So how are they having children? Are they importing the women? Like, personally, the other options? No. Jimmy and his girlfriend Judy are introduced. Really, this is only notable because the sound effects that happen when Judy moves.
If we're that strong together, why are you dumping me again?
I'm not dumping you. I just think we're stronger together apart.
These are applied to everything else, actually, after this. It's like a poor man's homophobic, misogynistic Looney Tunes cartoon. Anyways, all the women in the movie are introduced over-sexualized, and this is a problem when it comes to fetishization of lesbianism and women in general. They don't skip out on the objectification either, don't worry. This scene is basically the only one you need to be able to understand what this movie is and will continue to be like.
It's like some sort of medieval gay bar.
Don't sweat it. The women folk are all off braiding their hair in some kind of naked fertility ceremony or something.
And if you thought it couldn't get any worse, right after this, Jimmy makes a very sensitive comment that he's worried that the men in the bar might sexually assault him because they're gay. Not like that's a horrible stereotype perpetuated by straight people to demonize being gay. The vicar then enters dramatically with his daughter, who's not a lesbian vampire yet, meaning she is under 18. They do sexualize her, though.
That's turning 18 and all, but
18, love it.
together we can stop this.
Vicar then mistakes Jimmy for someone, which, if you can guess, is conveniently a direct descendant of the Hetty, and the only one who can break the curse. Anyways, they're directed to an old cottage to stay the night, which the group of 4 gals that I showed in a scene earlier are also headed. All their main traits are just woman, so they're not really that important, except for Lottie, because she's the love interest, therefore she has a personality. There's also, Trudy's a bit different, But, that's only because, she just says, yeah. Except she moans it, so it's like, yeah, the entire time, you know? Also, Judy is following Jimmy to beg, you know, him to date her again because she's a serial breakupper. Everyone's at the cottage, excluding Judy. She's on her way. And they're partying or whatever, and then they dump, you know, some exposition about Carmilla, how men fear her, women want her. Then the two boring characters, the one not moaning and the one not the love interest, go to the outhouse. And I mean, the music that played during this scene was a choice. Trudy also goes upstairs to shower, and then all three of them are turned into vampires because, you know, they're not important anyways. Judy also catches up and, you know, also presumably becomes a vampire. We're about 35 minutes in when we see the vampires since the beginning of the movie. They're all moaning. I mean, people have been making vampires into a sexy creature of the night for a long time now. But there's something about them being lesbians while this movie is for the boys. You do the math. The vampires are easily killed in this movie. They also ooze out goo for no reason other than to add that little bit of gross out humor that 13-year-olds like. They escape and they run back to the cottage only for Jimmy to open the door and find Judy. Now, you know, we're pretty aware she's a vampire. They're not. But this introduces the fact that they can only come in if you invite them in, which I'd like to bring up the point, how the fuck did they get Trudy from inside the cottage if she never invited them in? You know, we're forced to remember the vicar and his daughter for a second, and then, you know, Lottie reveals that she's a virgin, and to that James Corden says he will jump at any chance he can get. What a gentleman. Then Jimmy accidentally invites all the vampires in because he's stupid. And then Lottie and him get taken because James Corden is pissing. He also says when in Rome, which can be taken two different ways in my opinion. And at this point, I fully believe that it is the worst option. Anyways, the vicar is here now, and he unfortunately saves James Corden, which means he had to go upstairs and completely ignored what was happening downstairs, or Corden was just pissing for a very long time. They also, you know, they cutely throw in a slur there. Personally, I have chosen not to record that scene and show it in my YouTube video. I will leave the timestamp somewhere up there. What you decide to do with that information or footage is up to you. You are your own person. I can't tell you to not bully James Corden. Now, at this point, the lesbians are planning on bringing back Carmilla because while Jimmy is the only one who can kill Carmilla, his blood is the only thing that can bring her back. You know, only when combined with a virgin. The vampires can also do that one Voldemort thing with, like, the skull, or, like, the Death Eater thing. The vicar leads Corden to the grave of Jimmy's ancestor, where they find the magic sword Dealdo. 10 points to whoever gets that, but it's not very hard to figure out. You know, they should have committed to the bit. It would have been semi-funnier, but you know, do they not know what strap-ons are? But now it's midnight, and the vicar leaves Corden to check on his daughter. You know, throughout this whole thing, the vicar is kind of like an NPC, like in Jumanji. No point of that scene other than showing that his daughter is in fact a vampire now, but he's back at the grave immediately, so you know, and they're opening it up. We have a questionably romantic scene. And then the vicar's daughter is now at the grave. The vicar isn't anymore. He left again. And we have this moment. Yeah, but anyway, she's 18, so she's a lesbian vampire now, and is promptly killed. You know, they're still the moaning vampires, constantly moaning. And, you know, they're resurrecting Carmilla. The vicar and Corden arrive, then everyone's released. Carmilla then kills the vicar or whatever, who gives a shit, and everyone can breathe a sigh of relief, because this movie is in fact nearly over. Long story short, for both my sake and yours, one of the vampires tracks down Lottie, they separate her, and then Lottie decapitates her using a necklace with a cross on it, because they're weak to crosses or whatever. Jesus. Also, then Carmilla shows up after that, and she has a really long tongue. Again, I'll leave it up to interpretation, but I am at this point assuming the worst. You know, 2 seconds after that, Carmilla also dies, so who cares? Now, the curse is lifted, and all the vampires are now humans, but still lesbians. There's no cure to being gay. I'm sorry. It's terminal. Ah, you're awake.
Where am I?
How are you feeling?
Oh God, the virus.
Don't worry, you're at the General Hospital now. There's a cure now, son. Unfortunately, there will be some lingering side effects.
Side effects? What do you mean side effects, bro?
You're still straight, I'm afraid. It's terminal.
I can't live like this. I have a husband. I have a family.
I'm sorry, sir. There's nothing I can do. At the end, our trio decides to keep fighting evil that, you know, happens to be gay. And I feel like with this final shot, they were setting up a nod for a potential sequel, but then no one liked this movie, and that's really funny. Now, I know a specific faction of people would defend this movie by saying it's dark humor. Riddle me this. If this is dark humor, then why isn't it funny? There's a reason this movie spent a while in production hell. Nobody wanted to pick it up. I do want to point out that this movie came out in 2009, about 12 to 13 years ago, and a part of me doesn't know how to wrap this up anymore. I do want James Corden to more so recognize his part in this movie, as unlikely as that will be, but one thing I can say without hesitation is that this is probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I feel like there's a point to be made about, like, punching down in comedy, and the fact that the two writers and the two main actors are all straight men doesn't feel right. There's not much more for me to say here. The movie's content just speaks for itself. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you'd like, subscribe. I'll try to have more content coming out soon. Also, if you have any suggestions of terrible movies, or TikTokers, or YouTubers, or trends, or books, or absolutely fucking anything, you can comment down below, send me a DM on TikTok or Instagram. I don't really care. I'm bored out of my brains. But thank you guys so much, and I'll see you next time.